Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it runs for about 3 hours. Just kind of depends. So if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So let's scroll down and see if anybody is hopping on yet. I have been having issues with Zoom for the past couple weeks. So I apologize if you guys have been trying to watch the book club video or the live stream with Angie. I don't know what's going on. There's a glitch with Zoom. I've emailed them. Basically, long story short, the live stream is showing live long after it ends. So okay, good. Louise is here. I'm so glad. I was starting to worry that maybe this live stream wasn't even showing up. So I'm glad. Welcome. Oh, technology is I have a tense relationship with technology, to say the least. And I also wanted to say there is we were talking about the website forum last time. I am still trying to get that figured out. Um, I think I know what the solution is. It's beyond my abilities, which isn't saying very much, but it's beyond my abilities. I am working to get that resolved. I have a few messages out to a few different people, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So, oh, very cool. Jack says, "Hey, Dana, Hufflemom and I are still doing your homework. How is it going? I'm curious. Now that it's been at least a week." How's it going? Dave says, "Good morning here from Liverpool, England. It's 1:33 in the morning here." He says, "I just got notice." How are you doing, Dave? Are you having trouble sleeping or are you just a night owl? Jack says, 1:33 in the morning. Kevin says, "Hey." Nicole, Christ first. Baby Babsy Chicky. Oh, is also in the UK. Well, welcome, welcome. Oh, Kaylee, that is a great question. Asks, "Can you talk about dating after abuse? I don't feel ready, but I'm feeling needy and I'm trying to control it." So, yes, and this is, oh, there's so much that needs to be said around this. It's a big question with an even bigger answer. So, I'll tell you what people tend to think uh, being ready to date after abuse means and what it actually means are two very different things. A lot of people, when they say, "I don't feel ready to date yet," what they mean is, I, they're maybe feeling borderline suicidal. They don't feel certain of their judgment. They're they're struggling with a large amount of fear or anxiety about getting tangled up with another abusive person, or they're just not sure that they're emotionally stable enough to be able to enter into a relationship. All of that is completely understandable and very, very valid. And where I see a lot of people, myself included, that have gone wrong is they think, okay, once they're feeling more emotionally stable, um, that that means that they're ready to date. And that's only a very small part of what it means to be ready to date. So to really truly be ready to date after abuse, it, like you said, there is a concern if a person's feeling needy. Um, this is not it, feeling needy and getting out into the dating world is akin to being hungry and going to the grocery store. Like, you really want to avoid doing that because you're just not going to make good decisions. And so for this reason, I encourage people kind of first and foremost, to get out there, recultivate friendships, make some new ones, cultivate hobbies. You really want to build up a life that you love that's multidimensional. So it's again, it's like eating before you go to the grocery store. So you're not going there because you're starving. You're going there because you're cool, calm, and collected enough to be able to make good decisions. And dating is very much the same way. So if you build up this life that you love, then when you start dating, it's more of this place of, boy, I'd really like to share this life I have with someone versus I'm so lonely. I really need companionship or, um, yeah, like I have no life. I have no friends. I have no hobbies. I really need somebody else to come along to fill that void within me. And this is something that I think so many of us really struggle with, especially after abuse, when it's like a bomb goes off in your life and you're starting from scratch. So really making sure that you have some of those foundational pieces in place. Some of the other pieces that I had talked about earlier about uh, trust, being able to trust your own judgment about people and situations, and being able to cultivate trust appropriately are also two very big skills that people struggle with. Um, and again, that's normal, but and unfortunately, there's only so much healing that we can kind of do on our own. Um, a lot of these skills, you're only going to see how well you're doing with them when you're in relationship with other people. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but friendships and these kinds of things. So going slow is a big thing. So one of the shifts that people tend to make or need to make is before we encountered this abusive person, a lot of us tended to have the mindset of, well, I'm just going to trust, I'm going to love like I've never been hurt, or I trust people until they've given me a reason to not trust them. And then that tends to backfire. So, appropriate trust is something that's built with appropriate behavior over an appropriate period of time. So, it's not healthy or appropriate to completely trust a total stranger. So take the pressure off of yourself if that's something that you're struggling with, like, "Oh man, what's wrong with me? I've this guy or gal seems so great and I've been out with them, I don't know, a handful of dates and I don't trust them. I'm just concerned about what if they're abusive or what if this or what if that?" And the reality is you don't know them yet. So those concerns are valid. Time and appropriate behavior over time will kind of show you their character and if they're a good fit for you. So I think knowing that um, can help. If you're going into online dating, I think it's very important to realize that if you've been, well, I think in general, online dating, the number of insincere, and that's putting it mildly and nicely, level of insincere people on there is very high. So I really discourage you from getting emotionally invested in people that you meet online. I would wait at least a couple months before you get kind of kind of get caught up in any emotions or feelings for them. There's a lot of married people on there. There's a lot of people that are dating and cheating. There's a lot of people that are just kind of living out their fantasies online. And it's difficult to tell the sincere people from the insincere people. So that just takes time and just kind of seeing if their behavior seems squirrely, if um you know kind of how they treat you, these kinds of things. Some other important things, and we talked about this last week, having to do with dating, is a big part of being ready to date again involves having assertive communication and knowing when you're being mistreated and knowing when you're being treated in a way that's just simply not comfortable for you. So, for sure, knowing when a person's being abusive, but continue to back that up, knowing when you're being kind of taken for granted or being mistreated, or and then backing it up even further when you're being treated in a way that's just simply not okay with you. So, and realizing that anywhere along that spectrum, it's valid. So, and when a person is being treated in a way that's not okay with them, this is a very individual thing. Everybody's going to have their own kind of soft spots when it comes to this, their own things that they just don't like, or boundaries that they just need to have respected. And so, really kind of being aware of what those are for you. And I think Angie, I think it was yesterday, Angie was mentioned, somebody that had a severe food allergy. This person could not have certain foods in their house. And so whoever they dated needed to not eat those foods or have them in the house. That's a very unique individual thing. And not everybody's going to be okay with that, but that's what that person needed out of, one of many things that they needed in a relationship. So other people they might be really into, um, I don't know, things that traveling, that might be a really big thing for them, or they might be really into not traveling, or their faith is a big part of their life, or um, their children, or they might want children, or they might not want children. Having these discussions, knowing what's important to you and making sure that you're going in the same, or at least have the desire to go in the same direction as this person is vital. So, okay, let's see here. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. That's great, Dave. He was saying, I've had years of bullying, but I'm strong. And now I see a few narcissists around me and I walk away. My instinct is to try and win them over, but your advice teaches me I can never win. And I hope, Dave, that you can view that as at walking away as winning. This is something that I think we all struggle with, is kind of taking more of this kind of tai chi, a more passive approach to people, to difficult people. This is winning, and it can feel like we're being passive, or it can feel like we're not doing enough, that we need to somehow stand our ground and you know get through to them or convince them that they're wrong and we're right. And that's what losing looks like. That's just wasting your time, your energy, your effort, all of that. It's the kind of proverbial throwing pearls to swine. And once we can make that shift of, this is, you've probably heard the saying, like, not my circus, not my monkeys, kind of a thing. That's what that is. Like, this is not my circus. This is not something that I need to be responsible for. And I'm just going to keep moving on. Okay, let's see here. Darlene says, I agree, Dana. I'm emotionally stable after 3 years of abuse counseling, but I am not ready to date. I'm afraid of another narcissist. I know the red flags, but I knew most of them before I dated my ex. Yeah. And here that you bring up another really valid point, Darlene. And this, again, this is something a lot of people struggle with, myself included, is there's this idea of, or there's this very legitimate fear of, I'm so scared to get tangled up with somebody that could cause that much damage again, that could hurt me like that again. And being aware of red flags of dangerous, destructive, abusive people in general is really helpful, just for that validation and education component. Uh, So educating yourself about the different forms of abuse, especially more of like the more subtle forms of abuse, such as emotional and psychological, that's really helpful. But and for anybody that's new on this journey, my book Start Here. You can find all my books on my website, thriveafterabuse.com, or on Amazon, or hopefully in your local library under Dana Morningstar. So um, just a thought. I really encourage people to start with my book that's called Start Here. And again, you can, if you have a library card, you can request that your library order it. You can get it on audiobook through your library. It's free. So starting there, that'll help identify or kind of fill in any of the missing pieces about what abuse is, um, kind of frequently asked questions, experiences, these kinds of things. And then my second book, Out of the Fog, addresses these concepts in more depth and compares and contrasts them. And then my third book, The Narcissist Playbook, talks more about manipulation and action. And then the last, like third or so of the book, talks about traits within us that are frequently manipulated. So it's more of kind of a self inventory of um, a lot of normal, decent, good traits that can be manipulated, and kind of how to know when those are being manipulated. So I would encourage you to look into that. But here's the thing too with uh, problematic people is knowing all of this is only going to get us so far. So there will be people, take the pressure off of yourself, I guess is what I'm saying. There will be people that will fly under your radar who, because every single problematic person's going to come across in a different way because they're all different. Some are full, some rage when they don't get their way. Some don't. Some cheat, some don't. Some, um, are really, I don't know, hypersexual. Some aren't. Some are very racist or sexist or what have you, and then others aren't. Some are very controlling, and others are a lot more kind of covert about how they control. So it's not so much about being able to spot the specifics of problematic behavior. It's more about getting in tune with your own boundaries and knowing when those are being crossed. And and then how to respond to that when that happens. So sometimes, and again, this goes for me too, you'll have people that fly under your radar, and especially when you're first practicing all of these skills, it can feel really discouraging. You're like, gosh, I cannot believe I was friends with another, y- you know, problematic person, or I got in a relationship with another abusive person. Like, how is this happening? And it can feel really discouraging, but it's a skill. It's a skill. Getting in tune with your boundaries and your standards and your deal breakers, and really holding to them, and um, learning how to assert yourself and validate yourself with, yeah, that kind of behavior is not okay with me. Instead of, again, I think so many people struggle with not being grounded in that because this is stuff that's not taught. And so it's easy for them to get knocked off balance by the problematic person, or your friends, or your loved ones, or whoever might say, oh, this is the same as your ex. You need to um, love like you've never been hurt, or this person seems so great, or blah blah blah. And so it's really easy to second guess yourself, but cultivating that trust within yourself of, you know what's nourishing and what's draining. You know how these things feel, and you're able to address these things effectively with somebody. And you know, there's a lot of criteria a person has to meet in order for it to be like a workable relationship. So, and that can be discouraging too. It's like, man, this person, we have the same sense of humor. We have so many things in common. I really, you know, we have kind of the same faith. We have the same direction in life, but then there might be one or two things that are like, ooh, yikes. I don't like their temper, or I don't like, you know, whatever. And that can feel, we might feel pulled to try to work on things. And we might even find ourselves continuing thinking, okay, you know what? I am going to try to work on this and see we, s- if we have the ability to work on these issues, if they have the desire, and if these things are able to get resolved. So it's not, I guess the point is, I'm not, it's sometimes, most of the time, it's not so easy every single time seeing a problematic person for what they are right away. And that's okay. It's okay. You see problematic behavior when it surfaces and you handle it accordingly. That's all any of us can do. Okay, let's see. Oh, that's good. Jack says, okay, so their homework, if you guys have been following along with this. So Jack was been struggling for a very long time with uh, accepting love. So Jack and Hufflemom are married. And for those of you that are new here, and so Jack's issue is he really has a difficult time accepting love. It's kind of this, all of this negative stuff that comes up in him, these kind of unresolved childhood wounds, basically, that he feels unlovable, he feels unworthy, and he tends to verbally, and it also sounds like emotionally, push her away during these times because he it feels uh, it doesn't resonate with him, right? It causes him a lot of this cognitive dissonance of this can't be true because he's feeling unlovable. So the homework is, or was, for him to just say thank you after some expression of love on her end and to try to sit with it and just absorb it. That's it. So, and he's saying, well, Hufflemom repeatedly reminds him that I'm supposed to just say thank you after an expression of love. Good. How is that feeling for you? Let's see. Scrolling up, scroll up. Nope, scrolling down, scrolling down. Uh, okay, sorry. Scrolling up here, reading, trying to catch all this here. Ava says, okay, hi, Dana. It angers me that I got tangled up with a joke of a person. Now he is going to tarnish my reputation. How do I deal with the anger? I like how, I guess, first and foremost, I like how you phrase this question. I like how you're focusing on what you do have control over, which is how do you deal with the anger instead of how do you prevent him from tarnishing your reputation, which is something that you don't have control over. So I really like your focus on this. And if you've listened for any length of time, you know my perspective on reputation. Reputation is something that we really don't have a lot of control over because it's how others perceive us. But what we do have control over is our character. And that's where the focus really needs to be. So for those of us know our character, and that's longer lasting than reputation. Reputation comes and goes as, you look around on the news, any celebrity who's kind of gone through the ringer, you know, even if they haven't really done anything or legitimately haven't done anything. So, how do you deal with the anger? I guess first and foremost, it's appropriate anger. So, allowing yourself to feel it, allowing yourself, yeah, it's completely understandable that you're upset for a variety of reasons. It's okay. It's okay to be upset that you got tangled up with the joke of a person. It's frustrating and it's irritating and it can feel defeating and angering, and exhausting and like, I cannot believe I'm here again. How, ugh. So just acknowledging that. But again, it's good that you're seeing it as their behavior is ridiculous and that this isn't a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them. It just took you until now to really see it. And sometimes that happens. So, how do you deal with the anger? Allowing yourself to feel it. And then I would encourage you to kind of reframe your understanding of that anger and realize it's appropriate anger. And this anger, when we feel anger, it's an emotion that's designed for self protection. So when it's appropriate anger, it's designed for self protection. Somebody's done something to hurt us. And if we can acknowledge that, because this anger is validating, like somebody's trying to hurt me, it's appropriate for me to be upset with them. And just confirmation of, I don't need that nonsense in my life. So telling yourself, yep, this is just confirmation that I don't need that nonsense in my life. It's a good sign that you're angry about it. That's healthy and appropriate. And I would encourage you to try to channel that anger also into positive things. There's a lot of energy in anger. Don't waste it. Seriously. You can power clean your house with anger. Like you can rage organize things. You can go rage clean your car. You can rage, uh, you know, organize your pantry. Seriously, you can go rage jogging. There's a lot of power and energy in anger. And if you can harness it, you can it's like rocket fuel. You can radically take your life to a better place in a very short period of time. So as you're doing that, as you're uh, rechanneling that anger into something positive, think of it as a fire hose. When you turn on a fire hose, it's just spraying everywhere. But if you direct it at something, it becomes very powerful. So you're directing that fire hose of anger in a variety of ways. And I would encourage you to consciously go about this. So you're thinking, maybe even telling yourself, the best revenge is a good life. The best revenge is a good life. Like, I will be stronger for this. I will be better for this. I will come out on top. This is a pebble in my shoe. This is not a mountain for me to climb. F this person. Like, I got this. I don't need their nonsense. So, kind of developing these affirmations, developing these uh, mantras, giving purpose to your energy. And because it's real easy, it's times like this where it can be easy to get sucked into uh, even more problematic things, like drinking and smoking and escape shopping and eating and doing things that are just comforting ourselves versus actually letting that anger out in a constructive way. You might even want to try writing a letter to this person, knowing that you're not going to send it, but make it as angry and as hate filled and as just emotional as you want. Write it all out and then take it and then burn it. And if you have, you can do a Zoom party or something, a Skype party with some friends since we're in quarantine, and have them be part of this kind of closure ceremony and have it just be like, this is my F this person party. And we're all going to have a glass of wine and we're going to talk about like how, um, you're just going to have this vent session. And then afterwards, you're going to talk about how you're going to use this energy towards your highest and greatest good and towards the highest and greatest good of your goals and of others. So those are some ideas. Okay, let's see. Oh boy. Gosh, there's so many good questions and comments here. Marie asks, Dana, can you explain why we can gloss over empty buckets? How we gloss over red flags because we have empty buckets. Sure. So this, um, hold on a second here. Okay. This comes down to when I talk about buckets, I think this is an easier way to comprehend kind of the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're familiar with that. So Maslow's hierarchy was basically that we all have these these are the needs of a human being. And it starts off, so it's a pyramid shape, so a triangle. And at the base, these are the basic human needs, kind of food, clothing, shelter, safety, stability, basic self-esteem needs. And as we climb this pyramid, the needs become more complex. And at the top of the pyramid, it's this idea of self-actualization. Okay, so we're kind of living a life of purpose on purpose. Not very many people ever get to that point. And the basic needs, because a lot of us never get past those basic needs points. We're continually going up one or two steps and then going back down, one or two steps and then going back down. So when and we're born. So if you think of these steps of Maslow's hierarchy in terms of buckets instead of steps. So we're all born into this life with a series of these buckets, the stability, safety, significance, our relationships to other people and their relationships to us. If as a child, these needs are not met or not met well enough, then we're going to have uh, the buckets, the fullness of the buckets is going to be low, depending on how well those needs are met. And if that child grows up with kind of profound deficiencies in those needs, it's equivalent to them having holes in their bucket as they grow up until they're able to actually realize this is what's going on and they can address they can fix those holes so their bucket actually can hold water, you know. So if we have these vulnerable, and the thing is, because this isn't taught especially to the level that it needs to be, none of us are really aware that we're walking through this life with buckets. And so when we have these unresolved things within us, we're making decisions, we're in survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we're making the bulk of our decisions off of our immediate needs. What works for us in this moment? Like we were talking about earlier, it's the difference between going to the grocery store after you've eaten or going when you're really hungry. And take that analogy even further. If you go to the grocery store, your tummy's grumbling, you're probably going to make some poor decisions. If you go to the grocery store and you haven't eaten in a day, you're going to make even you're going to make very different decisions than if you haven't eaten in an hour. If you're going to go to the store and you haven't eaten in 3 days, you're going to make even different decisions. Those food decisions you're making are going to be based off of immediate gratification and potentially fear of the unknown. So the food that you buy, if you've got $100 and that's it, and you have no job and you have no promise, no guarantee of any future income, you're going to be more inclined to kind of, bulk up with kind of high calorie foods because you're coming from that place of, um, anxiety and uncertainty versus if you've got income regularly coming in, you've got food in your refrigerator, what have you. So it's how those buckets are already, how filled they already are, I guess is what I'm saying. So a lot of people tend to walk around. There was, well, with a low bucket in the bucket of um, significance. So like relationships. So they might have grown up in a household where um, maybe they were abandoned by a parent, or they didn't have a good relationship with one or more of their parents, or they were bullied, or they were in an abusive relationship, uh, younger in some way, shape, or form. That's going to create these vulnerabilities, potential vulnerabilities later on in life, unless those are addressed, unless those wounds are addressed. And so later on in life too, with relationships. So let's just say a person has a wonderful childhood. It was completely nourishing and nurturing in every way possible. But then as they get tangled up with um, an abusive person later on in life, and they're married to this person for any length of time, really, and that relationship ends, and that person has done their spouse or significant other said a lot of hateful, hurtful things. Um, there's a lot of damage done, but the person's not aware of that damage necessarily. And so they might even tell themselves, you know what, I am never going to date anybody like my ex. And so they're on the lookout to avoid people that treat them like their ex, which is good. That's good. That's a good start, right? Trying to avoid people that cheat and lie and yell and belittle and, do hateful, hurtful things. But what happens is a lot of people will then do the polar opposite. So they'll avoid maybe outright problematic people, but then they're going to get really sucked in by um, very charismatic, very charming, seemingly the perfect people who are going to tell them everything that they want to hear, kind of the finessers of the con artists, really, the emotional or financial con artists out there. And then that relationship runs its course, and then they're all, and then it doesn't work out, and then they're left just as hurt, but they're hurt in a different way. And they're confused by this because they're like, well, wait a minute, I thought I did everything right. I avoided this, um, the snake on the street, basically, but then they got tangled up with the snake in the grass. And so that's how that can pan out. And tell a person really the only way out of that is to get in tune with understanding when you're being treated in a way that's not okay with you, and addressing that stuff early on. And even then, there's going to be people that'll say and do all of the right things that are very charming, and they're very manipulative. It's kind of the Bill Cosbys of the world, that it might just take a while to see them coming. Thankfully, I think those kinds of people are few and far between, but if you get tangled up with them, there's only so much that any of us can do. But being aware of the vulnerabilities that you have makes a huge difference, and can really keep you safe. This is how not being aware of these vulnerabilities is how people get caught up in a lot of, uh, scams and online dating scams, these kinds of things where it's yeah, they're just kind of being told everything they want to hear, and then, you know, uh, being taken advantage of. Dave saying he's walked away from 7 narcissistic people. All of them were extreme, so not mild. Well, that's good. That's part of it, is being able to be aware of the low-hanging fruit, right? Like that's the slow pitch. So if you can hit the slow pitch, that's a great start. So if it's the obviously problematic people out there that you're like, "Yo, why?" and you walk away, that's great. That is a fantastic start. Your skills will continue to improve with time and practice, just like with anything else. Okay. Jennifer, great question, asks, how does gaslighting manifest? Is it strictly telling lies? So this is going to depend on who you talk to and I guess how you're defining gaslighting. Gaslighting, in a broad sense of the way, it's the erosion of another person's reality. So, but there's a lot of people out, and I'm kind of on the fence about this. If it's because really the original definition of gaslighting is intentional, like the intentional erosion of another person's reality. So, for example, um, it would be somebody who's moving your car keys and then denying it, or someone who's telling you, somebody who's cheating on you, but then telling you that they're not cheating on you. Um, somebody, and you keep, showing them proof. Here, well, here are texts, and here are pictures, and here's this, and here's that, and they keep denying it. They're telling you that you're crazy, that that never happened, that you must have imagined it, that they're they're not owning up to it. And even then, I think that you could make a case because that's not even that's more of them wanting to deny and deflect than them actually intentionally. It's walking that line between them trying to deny and deflect and them trying to intentionally erode your reality. The erosion of another person's reality in that case is a byproduct of their denial and deflection, because they don't want to face the truth. Whereas I think the original concept of gaslighting had more to do with, it was just trying to erode a person's reality. I don't know. I kind of I when I talk about gaslighting, I refer to it in like the broader sense of um, eroding, intentionally or otherwise, eroding another person's reality, because it's uh it's just very damaging behavior, and the results are the same. So that person at the end of it questions, they don't trust themselves, they start questioning everything. Um, what's down is up and what's up is down. And this unintentional level of gaslighting can occur in both, mild and major ways. Again, intentionally, unintentionally. Uh, it's very problematic, but the results are still the same. It's still very damaging. So, like a more mild form of gaslighting that doesn't involve lying would be, uh, let's say, parents, adults do this unintentionally all the time with kids. So let's say you're with, I don't know, we're with a child, right? We're hanging out with a kid, and that kid says, "Oh, I really want to have I don't know, French fries. Let's go to McDonald's. I really want French fries." And you say, "Oh, you know what? You don't like French fries." And maybe they really didn't like French fries last week, you know, but you're saying, "Oh, no, no, you don't like French fries. You're not going to like them." They said, "No, no, no, I really want them." And you say, "No, no, how about you get chicken nuggets instead?" And they said, "No, no, no, I want French fries." "No, no, no, you're not going to like them. You want to get chicken nuggets." And then the kid starts wondering, well, do I like, what do I really want? And do I not like French fries? I'm pretty sure I like I had a French fry yesterday at school and I really liked it. And so now they're confused. This kind of thing, it's subtle, but it still really rattles a person to where not do, uh, they might not try that food again, or they might stop asking for that child. It might take a long time for them to ask for that food again because they were told, no, no, you don't like it. It's that's so such a minor thing, but with such major results. More common in terms of abusive relationships has to do with cheating. It has to do with deceitful behavior that a person doesn't want to face. And so they're going, and some of it can for sure be malicious and intentional and very sadistic, where that other person is intentionally trying to toy with that person to just to watch them break because they enjoy it. So it's Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah, good job. SD says, I started writing things down and showing him. Big mistake because then he knew that I knew, and that was not good for me. Yeah, she says, oh gosh, all the time it was phone games constantly. That kind of thing. When you realize, okay, like if you're in a relationship where you have to write things down and there's this constant confusion of reality, and it tends to be pretty specific. It tends to be about another person, like cheating or kind of the same issue over and over again. There's it's generally not getting cleared up because they don't want it to get cleared up. Again, most differences between two people are pretty easily resolved when both people are being sincere. And if kind of a relatively brief solutions-oriented conversation can't clear things up, then there's more at work there. So, um, and then of course, if you can't have these open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication with somebody that you're in a relationship with, that's a big problem. And it's not just about that issue, it's about every issue because the trust and effective communication's not there. And when that's not there, there really is no relationship there. So one of the and I've mentioned this before, one of the um, rules, I guess, or new boundaries, healthy boundaries that I made for myself was I don't do crazy making. And that has been such a it's just been such a beacon of light in so many different situations. Granted, there's still been a few I just recently got out of uh, a work situation that was crazy making uh, that I should have left a long time ago, but I just kept thinking I was holding on to hope that it would be something other than it was, and that's not a good strategy. So, but by and large, kind of making that my new um, big criteria, like right up there with respect and dignity. Like I don't do crazy making. I don't do being treated with a lack of dignity and respect. I just don't do that. That has saved me so much, uh, so much chaos and drama. It's just I've avoided so much of that in my life. Like I said, there are still situations that surface where I'm like, "Oh, yikes, this is crazy making," and I'll try to have a solutions-oriented conversation. We'll try to work through it, and it's if it's you gotta get clear with yourself, "Where is my line in the sand before I walk away from this?" It doesn't even matter. Like, in this situation in my own life, I really don't think that the other person involved was trying to be difficult. It was like there were a lot of moving pieces in this situation, and no matter what she or I did, there was no forward momentum. It was just perpetual miscommunication, uh, just it felt like there just was no it felt like trying to move forward and somebody like you're trying to run on a marble floor that had baby oil all over it. Like you're just doing that kind of Flintstone run where your legs are moving, but you're not really going anywhere. Like that's how it felt. So sometimes the intentions can be sincere and there still isn't forward momentum possible. And it's just knowing you know, when to exit stage left kind of a thing. Um Darlene asks, does anyone know of any resources for men? My son left a narcissist. After the breakup, she threatened him if he didn't sleep with her, but now he feels he cheated on his fiance, but rape isn't cheating. Wow. Yeah, I would encourage him I want to say it's Rain, RAI. Let me just double check here. I think it's yeah, RAINN.org. They have a live chat. They have a 1-800 number. It is for uh, men and women, and it's for survivors of sexual assault of any kind, or their loved ones. And it's 24/7 and it's free. So I would encourage you or him or both to call and to talk to them. Ava says, "Remember how I said in his journal that he wanted to teach people how to be evil? Sometimes I feel he doesn't know what he is doing. Other times it is intentional. I get confused if he is a good person that is really damaged or if he is a bad person." Well, that it's so hard because nobody is that's such a kind of black or white way to look at it. Either he's a bad person with with periodic bouts of good behavior, or is he's a good person with bouts of really bad behavior. Either way you look at it, you lose, right? So it's sort of like, wow, it's like I don't know how to look at this. Is this um, poison that has water in it? Does this glass have poison with water in it, or does it have water with poison in it? Like, well, potato, potato. Even if it's 99% poison or 1% poison, either percentage of poison is still going to do you tremendous amount of harm. So you're best off not drinking any water that has poison in it. Does that make sense? So I I would say in a nutshell, if this person, regardless of whether or not he knows what he's if he's intentional or unintentional about uh, damaging, especially evil behavior, if he's journaling about it, I think that's a pretty big, like, just steer clear. That's not workable. And even if it were to be workable, he's the one that has to do the work. You staying as an active part of his life to support him while he works through um, issues he has with evil is that is a long, I mean, why? Why? That's a long, hard uphill road, and the risk is significantly greater than the reward. Okay, let's see here. Uh, Sam asks, "What can you do against a sadistic family member who acts nice but is acting?" I'd say it's the same thing you would do with anybody at any time, is to you have your boundaries. So if somebody is, especially if they have a history of causing harm, uh, then it's going to be getting distance from them as much as possible. Physical distance, emotional distance, both, more than likely. You've got to do, you got to keep yourself safe. So getting whatever distance you need in order to make that happen. Jennifer says, "My boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years, and he told me something the other day that he was surprised he didn't tell me before. It was something that he didn't want to tell anyone because it involved someone famous that he was embarrassed to have met because he doesn't like that celebrity." It's from 1998. Ugh, it was just so strange. I don't know if telling me that story was gaslighting. Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, that's hard to say. Uh, no, if he I think it can be crazy making, trying to figure out, is this other person lying to me? Are they telling the truth? Um, you know, if he has a history of being truthful, then I would just take that as truth. Um, if he has a history of, y- if he has a history of lying, or if he's got a history of kind of untrustworthy behavior, then kind of that's worth addressing on its own, regardless of whether or not the story is true. So I don't know if that helps or not. I guess if it was me, and if it was somebody that I'd been dating that long, and they had have a long-standing history of telling the truth and there's trust, I would just assume that it was something random from their past, that it just didn't come up because they didn't feel the need for it to come up, and would drive on. I don't know. Let's see here. Let me scroll up here. Mohammed asks, do you think it's better to use a pseudonym? I do not know if it's better for privacy. Yes, I would say it is absolutely better to use a pseudonym on the internet, on every place on the internet. If you're going to be discussing anything that you don't want getting back that you don't want the general public to know, I would encourage you to use a pseudonym. So at a minimum, maybe just an initial for your last name. So Cecilia, hello. Yeah, Ava is saying it kind of with problematic behavior, intentional versus unintentional. She says, I think sometimes with a narcissist, it is intentional, where they feel entitled to do so because, according to them, you're abusing them with your boundaries. And sometimes it's not, because they can't handle the truth. And again, I agree completely. And again, either way that you look at it, it's a no-win situation for you and for anybody else around them. So if a person's feeling abused because you're not going to let them just walk all over you, or if they can't handle the truth, then this is a no-go. So yeah, that's not workable. I mean, that person, needs, a lot of therapy, and it's something that they need to get figured out before they on their own, like as a couple trying to um, work through major things like that with another person. It's just, again, I don't want to say it's, it's your life to do or not do something. I would just be really clear with yourself as far as, where is your line in the sand with this? How much time and energy and money are you going to throw at this? How long are you willing to go into couples counseling, or having them go into individual counseling? And what kind of results are you needing to see, and in what time period before you walk away? Get clear about that that'll answer pretty much any question you have in life. Really, just getting parameters around your decision making is going to give you the clarity that you're looking for. Oh, Gareth is here and he's gone. He says, I gotta go. Be well in these strange times. We'll see you soon, everyone. Take care, Gareth. It was good seeing you while you were here. Okay. I have had that happen. Oh my gosh, Jamie, I totally forgot about this until you just said it. She said, my ex used to play games with me when I would call him and pretend that he couldn't hear me. So I would think something was wrong with my phone. I caught him doing this on many occasions. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I forgot this. Yes, I dated a guy briefly who would do the same thing. It was so weird. And I fell for it the first, I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe 3 times, because I just thought, "Oh, it must be my phone." But then I realized, no, it was when he didn't wanna talk about a certain issue. Like, it was always the same context around when he all of a sudden couldn't hear me anymore. And that was when I realized, okay, this is just some weird little game with him. Yeah, bizarre. Yeah, that stuff's not workable. That's just so immature and bizarre. Okay, let's see. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Mike asks, how do you handle the fear, obligation, and guilt while being no contact during Mother's Day? Is this your first Mother's Day being no contact? Or is this been an ongoing thing and you struggle with these feelings every year? And I guess to add to that, I would want to know, is it more guilt and obligation? Or kind of what are the feelings that are kind of specifically that are surrounding that? If it's if it's um I guess guilt, then asking yourself, is it what's known as appropriate guilt or what's known as inappropriate guilt? So appropriate guilt is you've done something wrong and you feel bad about it. When that happens, it's appropriate for us to feel guilty, right? Inappropriate guilt is you've done something, generally set a boundary with somebody, but that feels wrong and you feel guilty about it. So you did nothing wrong, you set a boundary, and the other person has an issue with it and you feel bad because of that. So sometimes separating out, why am I feeling guilty? And and this kind of ties into the obligation piece of it. When it comes to parent and child dynamics, there's a responsibility. It's a relationship, like any other relationship. There's roles that a parent plays, and there's the role that the child plays, and then there's kind of expectations around each role. And with a parent for a there's a difference between somebody who is either a sperm donor or who gives birth to you, who's just the person who passed along their DNA. That might sound really kind of callous and blunt, but it is what it is. You've got somebody who's passed along their DNA versus somebody who's actually done the job of raising you. And for a lot of people, what they've experienced is kind of somewhere in between, where they might have gotten the bare minimum of the kind of food, clothing, shelter, but that was it. And that food, clothing, and shelter came with a lot of fear and anxiety and shame and, different forms of abuse and all of that. And so the reason there's that confusion with this guilt and obligation is they're in their mind, they're still thinking of, well, we're using the term parent as um, kind of too broad of a term. That's where that confusion comes from. It's just like when people use the term friend to describe anybody that they've ever met. It's like, well, this is kind of where people are going wrong because, the person, the coworker, 6 cubicles down or what have you, you might know their name, but you don't really know them. You don't trust them because you don't know them. You just know that all you have in common is you work in the same place. But they're not a friend, they're just somebody you know. Just like, I don't know if a person, your ex says, "Oh, well, I'm talking to a friend on the phone," but really that friend is somebody that they've dated in the past, or they've been sexual with, or that they have feelings for or something. That's not a friend. That's outside of that. So when we use one word kind of all encompassing, it creates confusion. So if your mom wasn't a nourishing, nurturing mother, if there wasn't the the nurturing part of that parenting relationship, if it was more abusive, if it was um, if it was damaging, which is the opposite of parenting, right? It's instead of, parents' job is to protect their young. If they're not protecting you, if they're instead actively harming you, that's more along the lines of a predator. So no wonder there's this confusion there of, well, their v- behavior is really predatorial. They picked on me, they bullied me, they used me as their emotional or physical punching bag. But they still periodically bought me gifts for my birthday and um, had a roof over my head and all of this. So that's where a lot of that confusion can come from. So I think getting clear with yourself as to what the role is, the dynamic that you have with um, with this other person. I think the more you can kind of clarify your feelings around the relationship that you had, the more validation um, you'll get for whatever actions you need to take in order to stay safe. Uh, Kevin says, so should we call our parents slave owners or something? I mean, if there's not that connection there, I've heard people use the term, and this is normally used in the term of adoptive, like birth mother terms, where it's, yeah, just biological mom, bio dad kind of thing, where it designates DNA is what I got from this person. There was no nurturing, nourishing relationship there. All I got from them was DNA. So I kind of personally, I feel like it can be helpful to use that term, but it's whatever term, you know, you feel comfortable with. Let's see here. Sebastian says he recently began dating somebody new and she periodically says that she sees dead people. Oh boy. That is interesting. Yikes. Has she ever spoken to anybody else about this? And by seeing dead people, I guess, what does she mean by that? I'm just curious. Not that that really necessarily matters. I'm just curious what she means by that. And that's a really great distinction, Angela. Was talking about guilt and kind of inappropriate guilt, appropriate guilt. And she makes the added distinction of shame, that yes, guilt and shame are very different. And she had says, guilt is that I did something bad. Therefore, I feel bad about the thing that I did. Shame is I am bad. And a lot of this shame, so much of this stuff comes from early programming. So we're not even aware that we feel this way or that these messages have been ingrained in us, because when you grow up with it, that's just normal, right? It's just, that's how you did things. That's how you felt. And for so many people, they don't start to even question these messages until, much later in life. If they're lucky, they do it before their 30s. But I think for most people, it's not until they're in their 40s at least, until they begin to question these things. So, and the two, shame and guilt, tend to be two topics that tend to be blurred often. And Shame is often the result of growing up with kind of less than nourishing or nurturing parents. So that's the result, because kids kind of by design, they don't know any different. So when they do something bad, or something not desirable, right? They color on the walls, for example, right? Um, they don't eat all their dinner. They do kid stuff. If their parents, and here's the thing too with kids, kids are very, again, by design, by nature, very self-absorbed little creatures. They have to be. It's all about them. They need to get their needs met. And a 6-month-old baby does not care what you've got going on when it starts screaming in the middle of the night. Like, it is hungry and it wants food and it wants food now. And little kids, it's all about them all the time. And they don't, that ability to see others as, not just extensions of them or there for them, doesn't come until later in life. So the result of that is, as a young child, if they do something that their parent doesn't like, it's not even in their realm of possibility to think to themselves, oh, well, mother must have had a very bad day, or mother must have unhealed wounds from her own childhood. Like, there is no deep, psychological uh, evaluation of what's going on in the situation. All they perceive is, I'm bad. I did something bad, therefore I am bad. It's not until that person's much older, generally an adult, 20s, 30s, or older, where they start to look back on their childhood and they begin to see their parents' behavior. They begin to see their parents as adults and other human beings, and not just their parents. They begin to realize that their parents are also flawed. And that can be very traumatic. It's very traumatic for a child to have this realization early on, because it means that they're not safe. If they have flawed uh, parents who were supposed to be there to protect them, and they realize that my parents can't protect me, that's terrifying. That's why kids would rather internalize that and be like, I'm wrong, I need to change, instead of thinking that their parents are wrong and their parents need to change. It's just too traumatic. Not to mention they don't have the, you know, um, kind of cognitive functioning at that point to see multiple perspectives at once, or to even see their parents as adults. But when we see them, when we're adults and we realize our parents are flawed adults, flawed people just like we are, but in their own way, then we can start to understand, oh my gosh, you know, my parent, I don't, um, whatever wildly inappropriate response a parent had, or damaging response. Oh, I spilled cereal and um, my parent pushed my face into it and yelled at me about that. Or my parent said, um, I don't know, teased me about my weight, or they uh, bullied me, or they molested me, or they whatever they might have done, to realize, oh my gosh, I didn't deserve that. I didn't cause that. I had no part in it. I was a child. This was an adult, another adult with their own issues, who did this stuff. I was just on the receiving end of their own unresolved issues. Not saying that to justify that or to minimize what happened, but just to realize it wasn't because of you. So reviewing, I guess, going back and looking at our childhood through that lens of, it's two individuals having interactions, uh, and as that you were the child in this situation, and that their bad behavior doesn't mean that you're bad. Their bad behavior was their what you were seeing was their limitations with how to handle situations. So again, not to excuse it. Don't get me wrong at all. It's That was how they chose to handle it, and if they chose to handle it in a really inappropriate way, that's 100% on them. Okay. Let's see. Let me let's see, Sebastian. Sebastian says, I'm worried about her seeing dead people because she says no one understands her and she usually never speaks to anyone about it. I don't like that she doesn't want to consult about it. It sounds like he's concerned that she might be a narcissist. Again, I would put the term aside, narcissist aside. The fact that she's seeing dead people is concerning, and I validate your concern about that. I also think it's concerning that she doesn't want to speak to anybody about it. These kinds of, auditory or visual hallucinations tend to be a sign of a potential psychiatric issue. And like I think Darlene had said, um, oftentimes these can be treated, but a person has to go talk to a mental health, ideally a psychiatrist, about it and go from there. A lot of people that do have these types of auditory or visual hallucinations, there's a lot of stigma around this. They're afraid of being labeled as crazy. They're afraid of not being taken seriously. They're afraid of um, there's lots of legitimate, understandable concerns. And for them, these um, auditory and visual hallucinations feel very real. So it can be scary. It can be a whole mix of things, but uh, that's a lot to take on. So I would encourage you to think about to kind of think about how you feel about that, and um, kind of where your line is. Angela signing off says, I gotta go to bed. Okay, good night, and we will see ya next week. Let's see. Gamer Christina was saying, Dana, I'm fighting parental alienation. When you feel unlovable at your core, how do you fight for a child who does not want to come home with you? My 11-year-old is smart. She does not want to come home. So I know you had mentioned before one of the issues was with kind of parental alienation, that your ex was planting some seeds there and making her feel guilty for talking to you and these kinds of things, and that you had been understandably so upset when you would call and she wasn't uh, wanting to really engage in conversation. And it wasn't so much that she didn't want to talk to you, it was there was gonna be some sort of kinda hell to pay if she did from her dad, either icy treatment or, just passive aggressive kinda stuff, guilt trips, changes in his mood, these kinds of things. And it sounds like she was wanting to keep as much peace in her life as possible. So, in terms of your relationship with her, uh, I agree with you that you're feeling unlovable is is something that needs to be addressed and resolved. I think that would definitely help with that in terms of keeping your relationship going with your daughter. I came across a really wonderful technique the other day about um, kind of building bonds with children with different, no, how different with children that have had a variety of trauma or difficulties. So kind of resistant, I guess you could say, like resistant children. And the theory is called PACE, PACE, and it's an acronym that stands for approaching children, um, especially children with behaviors. And so the acronym stands for P is for playfulness, A is for acceptance, C is for compassion, and E is for empathy. And so the first step with, and I think this is just, it's so spot on. This guy, this has been his life's work, like this therapist's life's work. It's this concept is something that I've been kind of sniffing around for years, but he was obviously he's been doing this a lot longer than me. He articulated it, I just think, so well. And I love the PACE concept. It's basically that before any type of um, correction can happen, before behavioral correction can happen, a connection must be formed. And for so many parents, and I get it, so many parents, when there's what are perceived as behaviors from the child, they don't want to come home, they don't want to talk to you, they don't want to do what you say, they're arguing, they're calling you names, these kinds of things. It's we all have our buttons, and sometimes kids can really push them big time. And especially with kids that have um, a lot of unprocessed pain and trauma, they can push buttons big time, and it can push the calmest person past the edge. It's easy to have that happen. So this approach I thought was just so wonderful, because a lot of times we can get hung up in thinking they need more discipline, they need more, we've got to get a hold of this, we've got to get them in line, kind of a thing. And his approach is very much, it's the pace thing. So the first one is playfulness. So engaging a child in a, now not when they're being behavioral, but being, uh, but sometimes depending on like mild behaviors, it's having this mm, kind of casual, fun connection with them. But it's also that playfulness means engaging with them outside of just correcting them. So it can be like, silly, just being silly, silly jokes, um, playing games, um, just kind of taking a lighthearted approach to interacting with them, basically. And then the acceptance is realizing that the child feels how they feel. Their feelings are not right or wrong, they just are. And also realizing that children have, they have limited cognitive capacity, they have limited emotional expression, and they have limited verbal expression. So the result of that is they have limited expression across three domains. And you will see behaviors. This is why kind of these maladaptive behaviors in general, like all forms of abuse, is considered immature because it's not an effective response to our environment. Whereas a mature response is actually able to be solutions oriented, and it can be a kind of a more of like a win-win situation, and it's based off of, mutuality and teamwork. Whereas behavior that's considered immature isn't that. It's the denial, deflection, abuse, it's reactivity, it's all of that. But with kids, that's very much to be expected because they don't have the skills that hopefully we are able to um, cultivate within them and and within ourselves to be able to develop by the time we're an adult. So, um, so acceptance of they feel the way that they feel. Like with your daughter, she doesn't want to talk on the phone because she's gonna have to go walk on eggshells for the rest of the night with her dad. It's uncomfortable for her, right, wrong, or indifferent. This is just how she feels. And so then the next step in that is compassion, putting yourself and empathy, right? So putting yourself in her shoes. Oh my gosh, that must be so difficult for her to have to go walk on eggshells the rest of the night, and um, or to get guilt tripped by her dad, or in expressing that to her. So part of that compassion is if she's acting out or she's doing things that you're finding problematic, to be like, what, um, I don't know. Let's say she, I can't even think of it, got upset and uh, refused to come home. Okay, let's say you just go with your example. To tell her, honey, I can imagine that it's frustrating and it's difficult to have to go between two houses. And I know that there's two different sets of rules. You probably have two different sets of friends. There's a lot that's going on that must be difficult, that must be frustrating. And, and just empathizing with her situation. So a lot of times doing that and having the child feeling understood goes a long way in working with their behavior, and then helping them uh, I'm sorry, I think that C was not compassion, it was curiosity. Sorry. Curiosity. Compassion and empathy are kind of one and the same. Curiosity, what's going on? But not asking it in an attacking kind of a way, but um, well, kind of, where do you think that came from? Or you seemed really upset and I noticed that, you don't want to come home. Well, what do you think that's about? Well, would you say that you're upset with me, or is it that you want to spend more time with your friends over at your dad's? Getting curious about why they're doing what they're doing and helping them to tie their um, actions into their feelings, and then empathizing with that. Yeah, I can imagine you wouldn't want to come home with me if you want to play with your friends over at your dad's. So let's acknowledge that, and maybe let's see if we can work around that somehow, or we can somehow take that into consideration. Or if you can't, then being like, okay, I'm sorry, yeah, I don't blame you for feeling frustrated about that. It sucks. It sucks having to go back and forth between two different places, and I'm sorry that this is the case. So as far as you feeling unlovable at your core, uh again, I would encourage you to address that. There's a wide variety of ways to go about that, and that's a process. In general, one of the exercises that you can start doing tonight that I'm a huge fan of, and I feel a lot of people have had really good success with this, myself included, has been um, you can write down a series of affirmations having to do with your self-worth, realizing, writing down your the things about you that you do like, that are lovable, um, that you're curious, that you're a lifelong learner, that you do care, that you're trying your best. Um, these kinds of things, writing them down, and then this is going to sound really hokey, I know, but it it makes a difference. Then looking into your eyes in the mirror, it's going to feel awkward, it's going to feel ridiculous, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but looking into your eyes in the mirror and telling yourself this, and letting yourself feel it. So you're not just reciting the words in the mirror, you're actually letting it sink in. You know what, Christina, you've done a lot of things right. And there's a lot about you that is good and right. And, you care. You really care about your daughter. And there's a lot of things about you that are lovable. You're dedicated to personal growth. You care about other people. You and listing things. And so doing this and letting that sink in can really take big strides towards changing up that internal self-talk that you have. Are you seeing a therapist outside or outside? Are you seeing a therapist in addition to all this? Because if so, I would encourage you uh, to work on that. Okay, she says, Gamer Christina. Let's see if there's any more. I probably missed part of that here, but she says the daughter says she does not want to choose sides, and I would agree. She shouldn't have to. It's inappropriate for her to choose sides. So, as a good parent, I would say that you definitely don't want to put her in a position where she has to choose sides. Um, So she says, okay, I met her with compassion and said she can go stay at her dad's, but I will continue to call and go for small walks. But she is annoyed with that already. Okay, so then maybe um, tweaking that approach a little bit and maybe putting it back on her and saying, honey, I don't want you to have to choose sides. I love you. I enjoy spending time with you. You are, I couldn't ask for a neater kid. I just think you're so awesome. And I just love spending time with you. And so how can we do that? What would work for you? Could we go, and I know it's a little different because of quarantine and everything, but could we watch a movie together on Zoom? Could we, um, you know, what would she like to do during your time together? Is she open to playing games? There's some simple kind of question and answer games or different apps. If I don't know if she has a phone, but apps that you could play, kind of continue games on together. Or I would just, if it was me, I would just be very supportive in the fact that this is very difficult for her, and trying to engage with her in a way that is quality time for her. And if you haven't read the book yet, The Divorce Poison, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic book, and it really addresses the parental alienation. But I think at the end of the day, Christina, it helps to remember that kids aren't going to remember what you say. I forget who said, maybe it was Maya Angelou, I don't remember. Kids aren't going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And so to focus on cultivating those feelings with her, a feeling safe, a feeling loved, a feeling appreciated, uh, you know, really driving home the point of you're just wild about her. Like she just is such a neat kid, and uh, letting her know, oh, I was bragging about you the other day, or I just think it's so cool that you are into whatever kids are into these days. Uh, but sincerely, right? Like the things that you really truly enjoy about her, letting her know all of that, and letting her know too that you're always going to be on her side, that you're on her team, you're her mom. So, um, Jennifer, I'm just gonna take a drink here real quick. Jennifer says, my dad influenced a lot of what I'm interested in and a lot of my opinions and a lot of even my behaviors. but I'm worried that's skewed my identity. How do I know what is me and what is him? Okay, great question. Well, all parents deeply influence and skew their child's identity, regardless of how great that parent is or how problematic that parent is, or anywhere in between. So, who we are there's a lot of influence that comes from our parents. Um, so, I think that's part of kind of stepping into our selves as an adult is examining, do these beliefs or do these behaviors, does this still fit me, or have I outgrown this? Even things that might have been inherently yours, influences from friends, from, I don't know, elementary school, junior high, high school, or older, that we all pick up. We're so influenced. There's a saying out there that we are the um, I think it's this phrase is more in terms of income level, but like, uh, but we tend to be about like the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And that goes for income, we tend to make about the same amount of money as the 5 people we spend the most time with. We tend to have, I would say, the same kind of habits, the same sense of humor, uh, all of that. It's weird how that happens. So that's just part of kind of as we go through, if a person has that ability to be self-reflective, then they're continually examining what's working and what's not working in their life. And it really doesn't matter where you picked up those traits from, if it was from an abusive dad or if it was from a super supportive best friend. If it's something that you've outgrown that no longer suits you, then it no longer suits you. And to set it aside. So I guess I would approach it in that way of just looking at, okay, like what what are, and maybe even writing it down, taking out a piece of paper and uh drawing some boxes and thinking about your life in terms of uh physical health, emotional health, mental health, um your uh behaviors, your goals, your spiritual side, the different sides of who you are, and then writing down things that you like about yourself and then things that you either don't like or that you are maybe kind of questioning. And again, I wouldn't focus on necessarily where this comes from because that doesn't really matter. It's more of, is does this still work for you at this point in your life? So the more clarity you have about like what's working and what's not, the easier it's going to be to then address that specifically. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Um, Spiritual goddess says, I need help. I'm in the process of walking away from my covert narcissistic mother who gaslights me. I have no energy. I feel so disconnected from my body, yet exhausted to get a second job to help myself out. Yeah, that sounds like a lot. My goodness. Yeah, that's, boy, I guess to start with, it's going to be really tripling up on self-care and addressing um, the energy issue. Because if you're needing energy in order to get the motivation to get up and look for a second job, uh, then I think I would address that component first. So, what kind of supports do you have in place? And that, I guess, addressing the support system might be a good step in this. So, having people to kind of lean on or to talk to, or uh, all of that could, I would think, can help with the support, which can help with the motivation, which, the energy in moving forward. So I guess that would be my question to you is, do you have some type of support system in place? Yes, I agree with that advice as well. Changing My Life says, and start by calling a domestic abuse hotline. Find out what resources you can get for relocation. They can also just point you to resources. Yes, and so when you do call your local domestic abuse, domestic violence shelter, I would talk to them in terms of emotional and psychological abuse. So I would, or if there's more, then I would list that as well and say, this is what I'm experiencing at home. I've got to get out of here. This is just, um, this is my situation. Can you point me in the direction of some resources, or what ideas do you have? Oftentimes domestic violence centers do provide therapy free of cost to anybody that's in um, type of like domestic abuse situation. So that might be, if your support system is limited, that could be an excellent resource as well. Karen says, Dana, what do you do when you feel like the narcissists are winning? I guess I remind myself that they aren't. So any wins, when I think about narcissism, I think about that instant gratification kind of behavior, because that's what it is. It's people that are being really driven by their id, right? It's the kind of, it's the seven deadly sins. It's lust, it's envy, it's greed, it's, sloth, it's instant gratification, it's short-term gain kind of stuff. And there is no winning with that in the long run. There really isn't. It's very immature, underdeveloped coping strategies that they have with getting through life. It's, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely frustrating and enraging, because it is instant gratification. They do get a series of short term wins, and that's infuriating. It's not right and it's not fair. But it's kind of like anything that's um, truly worth having is worth doing right, and it's worth putting the time and energy into. And that's just something that they don't do. So they're not, I guess what I'm saying is I would change your definition of what you consider to be winning. Short-term wins isn't the same, even isn't it really in the same ballpark as long-term wins. So, okay, let's see here. Montana is asking about the book Divorce Poison and says, does this book, Divorce Poison, address how to fix parental alienation, or just that it exists? Anyone know? It addresses how to spot it, how to prevent it, how to spot it, and how to fix it. It's fantastic. So it's really thorough. It gives tons of strategies and examples, and for not just the parent, but also any type of like extended family that is seeing this and wants to be it helps people just to diffuse like poisonous manipulative behavior. So it's wonderful. Books that just acknowledge its existence are really frustrating to me. I've been listening I've been listening to a lot of books lately, through Audible and my local library, and it must just be me, I think. I really do think that I'm in the minority when it comes to this. I really don't like narrative nonfiction. If I'm reading a nonfiction book, I want it to read it because I have a problem and I need a solution. Like, I don't care about all of the fluff and the narrative. And I'm listening to this book right now, and it's so frustrating because it's like this book could seriously be maybe 25 pages. And I would have been fine with that because it would have been a high quality 25 pages. But there's all of this narrative that goes on around it about this woman's practice and her marriage and all this. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't need the story. I just give me the meat and potatoes of it, you know? Hi. Cool. Changing My Life says, I just borrowed Divorce Poison on Hoopla. Very cool. Isn't that the best app? I seriously feel like a kid in a candy store on Hoopla. So cool. Montana says, yeah, they are so frustrating. Yes, I just need the solution, damn it. Yeah, we must be in the minority. I feel like that's the new way that nonfiction books are being written these days. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like it. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Jennifer says, Dana, my boyfriend downloaded the book for the next book club meeting for me. Well, that was nice of him. What is it about? The next book is called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And I will say I'm going to contradict myself somewhat. This book, I just finished listening to it the other day. It's short. I think it's like 5 hours, compared to most books, which are closer between like 10 and 15 hours. It seems like that's kind of the average these days. It is, um, it's about a guy who is an entrepreneur, and he kind of goes through this period where he just loses everything in life. His relationship, his business is on the rocks, and he just kind of has this moment where he realizes he doesn't love himself and that he needs to really work on that. And although this is still, I would say, in that vein of narrative nonfiction, it's a good balance. If it's going to be narrative nonfiction, I'm okay with it being like that because it's 5 hours, it's engaging. He's a very good writer. So I do enjoy, I should say he's a very descriptive writer. Whether or not you think he's good or not, that's very subjective, but he's very descriptive, and that makes it engaging. Um, it's basically that book is completely focused on learning how to love yourself. And there's I believe a 4-step process he has with it. Um, I will say one of my biggest takeaways from that book, as not only a reader, but also a writer, is none of what he says is necessarily like earth shattering or like new information, but the way that he sums it up is it's very it's concise, and it's framed uh in an engaging story if you're going to have narrative nonfiction. So like that's fine, but it's chunked down. And for those of us that have a limited attention span and who lack patience, it's sort of like just get to it already. I really like that about this book, that it's only one topic. It doesn't veer off on a million different paths. It's very focused, and because of that, I think the message sticks more with people. So, you know, I like it. I thought it was a good book. Quick read, quick listen. Montana is asking about the book Divorce Poison, says, cool. Anything good for how to fix it in court? If I remember correctly, yes, there was some talk about dealing with parental alienation and manipulation with regards to court. I have notes on that book. Seriously, this week has been just stupid busy. Like, just stupid busy for me. And it's going to be stupid busy up until Sunday at least. So I have notes on divorce poison. Let me write this down. And I will work on getting those up on my website. So if you can give me until, let's say, Monday night, I will work on getting them up. Divorce poison notes. And then you can go and read my notes as well if you want. And my notes are really thorough on that book in particular. So thriveafterabuse.com, look under, it'll be under, I think there's a tab now called Book Club Notes. Yeah, Jennifer was saying, even when narcissists seem like they're winning, they're really not. If you think about it, they're just poisonous people that don't have genuine relationships. Yeah. And that's really it at the end of the day. I mean, if anything, there's some degree of, if anything, if you're going to feel anything for them, pity would be, I think, anger is very valid, but pity too, because there isn't any relationships of any depth with them. There isn't really the possibility of that because they don't see that they ever have a problem. It's everybody else's problem. And they're driven by these instant gratification things. Like it's a very shallow way. Their life has no substance to it. And that's sad. Like they're missing out on so much and they don't even realize it. It's sort of like the movie, I guess, or the cartoon Pinocchio, where you have, what is it? Well, I guess Peter Pan too. You have the Lost Boys, but Pinocchio, you have what do they call those kids? It's kids that are just running wild, and they're doing whatever. They're drinking, they're smoking, they're staying up late. They're they're just instant gratification. They're just doing whatever they want to do. And what is the result of that? Like in the end, it turns out that's a path to destruction, and they all turn into jackasses, if you remember the cartoon. And that's exactly what it is. Like you can look at that and be like, oh man, that's not fair. Oh, look at this person. They have all of these little, short wins, but you realize in the long run, that's not going to get anybody anywhere. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Ava says, I kicked my ex out of my house. He said I was abusive for kicking him out. He was the most ridiculous person I've ever met in my life. I spent 1.5 years with that, and it was too much. Yeah, I think we all can relate to that level of absurdity and ridiculousness. When you really see it, you're like, you have got to be kidding me. how it's mind-boggling, isn't it? It's mind-boggling to be like, wow, how are you an adult? Like, how do you get through life? Like, how does this work on any level for you to not have any accountability, any insight, any responsibility, any concept of boundaries or appropriate behavior? Like, how, like, you cheated on me and or lied to me or stole from me or were awful to me. I'm kicking you out or I'm leaving and you act like I did you wrong. Like, what? I don't, how does this compute? Because I don't get it. It's wild. It's just yet another sign of that like deeply skewed problematic mindset where you set boundaries, they feel abused. And that kind of stuff, when you really see the lack of insight and the lack of maturity, the benefit to that is it's confirmation of this is not workable. Like, this is not even in the ballpark of workable. Like, I didn't realize you didn't have these foundational skills of how to be an adult down. Like, I didn't realize that there were adults running around out there that didn't have these skills down. Like, that's outrageous. And when you really see that, when they're mad at you for I'm going to divorce you because you've cheated on me multiple times. I'm going to divorce you because you stole from me or you drained our child's college account or you did X, Y, and Z. And, then they flip out. You just think, oh my, I just like, I can't, I can't. What do you even say to that? I mean, it's just so outrageous that there's, I mean, your jaw just hits the floor and you can't even respond because it's so ridiculous. But it and I don't mean to make light of it. I mean, for some people that it can really just be an absolute mind scramble. For some people that are, especially if there's physical abuse involved, where they're physically abusive, the police are called, they go to jail, and then they're blaming you. And then they're blaming you for their abuse, and they're blaming you for being hurt by their abuse. Like, it's your fault that you got a broken arm or a bruise or something. There's no accountability for their actions. You can't work with that. Yeah, Truth Seeker says, yeah, exactly. You set boundaries, they feel abused. They can dish it out and can't even handle the boundary itself. I mean, and that's exactly what it is. The level of hypocrisy and like the lack of insight is just truly astounding. It's weird, right? Like, it's weird that somebody can have an cognitive understanding of a concept and they can see how it can relate to them. Like, they don't want to be cheated on. They don't want to be lied to. They don't want to be stolen from. But they can't see how that pertains to other people. So if they don't want to be treated rudely, if you were to treat them the way that they treated you, they would be out the door. They wouldn't stay, they wouldn't tolerate that. But they don't, it's for them, it's not, it's just that immaturity. Like, they don't see the hypocrisy in that because they never feel that they're wrong. So if you cross, in their mind, if you cross a boundary or you do something hurtful, they feel every right to feel hurt. And they do have every right to feel hurt because nobody, if somebody is either intentionally or even unintentionally crossing a boundary, it's going to feel uncomfortable and it's probably going to be a little bit hurtful. They feel how they feel. Okay. Uh, and then well, they wouldn't, but they have every right to be upset. They don't have every right to lash out on other people, but they have the right to feel how they feel. But they don't understand when they're rude because they feel entitled. It's, well, yeah, I called you, I told you you were stupid, fat, and ugly because you are. Like, in their mind, they're just telling the truth. And, there's no tact, there's no, um, but they require tact. If you were to tell them the same thing, hey, you're stupid, fat, or ugly, they would be so hurt by that. Why are you being so, why are you being mean? That's so, uh, it's just, they don't get it. They don't get the hypocrisy in that. Sebastian says, yeah, narcissists think they are God. Yeah, pretty much. It's that mentality of, it's what happens when a person has that blinding degree of selfishness, when they are the only, when they're so blinded by their ego that they're unable to see past themselves. All they're able to think about and see is their wants, their needs. It's not how there is no team orientedness. There is no ability to see other people as individuals. It's everybody is an extension of them. It's that childlike mentality like we were talking about earlier. Like mom and dad, those are my parents. There is no concept of, oh, they're adults who have their own problems, have their own parents, right? Who have their own childhood, who have their own strengths and weaknesses. They are just my parents. They are here to serve me. I am their child. Like there's a time and stage in development where that's appropriate, but you grow out of it. And when a person doesn't grow out of that, and that continues where they keep viewing everybody as an extension of them. Well, you are my significant other. I don't see your individuality. I need you to be what I need. You need to meet my wants and needs. You're like my parent. You're my boyfriend. You're my girlfriend. Therefore, then this is what I need. These are the needs that I need you to meet. And if you don't do that, because you're going to be your own person, right? They don't see that. How dare you? How dare you tell me no? How dare you set boundaries? How dare you have your own interests that I don't agree with? What are you doing? You're an extension of me. That's that's the mindset. So when you truly see it for what it is, you realize just, oh boy, this is a problem, you know? Yep, and that's a great way to put it, David. He says they define themselves as being the gold standard and everyone else is judged relative to them. So by definition, everyone else falls short except them. Yep. And then ironically, to add to that, if let's say you somehow excel, so they're the gold standard, but you're like the platinum standard, right? You've got something that's one up on them, whatever that might be. And a lot of times it's just their perception. It might not even be, and like it could be legitimate. They have a master's degree, you have a PhD, right? They drive a 2019 Tesla. You just bought a 2020 Tesla. Y- you see what I'm saying? Like you could have something slightly better or even significantly better, but it's anything better than them is going to be perceived as uh it's going to injure their ego because their ego is so fragile. It's like a child's ego. It's not developed. So any perceived slight is a direct threat to them. Whereas a kind of quote unquote normal person, we might feel a little envious. We might feel jealous. We might feel, this, or we might celebrate for somebody. Like, oh, that's so awesome. Good. It's all of these feelings. It really depends kind of where we are in our own life. There's times where If we just lost our job, it's really difficult for us to celebrate the financial wins of somebody else. It feels like salt in the wound. But when we're doing okay, but we're still able to realize, oh man, uh, I wish I could be happy for this other person. And you feel bad that you can't, that you're, that you can't be because you're just at a hard place in your own life. That's okay. But it's when we're trying to actively tear somebody down because they have something that we wish we had, that's when it becomes a problem. But that's what the problem with narcissism is. It's, you know, uh, they have to be the biggest, brightest, and best. And if not, they're either, if they can't somehow get that, if they can't earn it, then they're going to start destroying. They can't get it, then they're going to destroy everything around them in order to make that happen. If they can't have the tallest building on the block, they're going to start knocking down other buildings, kind of a thing. So let's see. Right. That's a good example. Crystal says the narc I married would get mad when I came home with the same or better grades than him from my college classes. He'd say it was because they must have really lowered the grading standards. Really? Yeah, that that kind of thing. Like you just, and that goes back to, sorry, I accidentally kicked off my shoe. I had to, in order to feel level, I had to get it back on again. Um, but yeah, that's the thing. When it, it it's so bizarre when you realize you're like, oh my God, I'm locked into this weird competition thing. And why are we even in competition? You're my significant other or my sister or my friend, or like we're just a coworker. Like, why does it have to be like this? Yeah, I don't care. I'm not trying to, I don't want to run this race. I'm doing my thing. And then that sucks, right? Because then you feel like I can't share anything with this person because they like they're just so, their ego is just so paper thin that anything that you've got going on in your life is going to just be like taking a rock through it feels like, for them, it feels like a rock being thrown through their window. And that sucks because then you're just walking on eggshells and you're like, I can't, like, I don't even know what's going to set this person off. If you say, oh, I got my mom a Mother's Day, I got my mom an electronic picture frame, or I got her, roses for Mother's Day. And if they have a bad relationship with their mother, then they are resentful with that. I mean, like, there's just like, there's no rhyme or reason for it. And you have no idea where those lines are that could set them off. Not, it's an anxiety inducing way to be. Let's see. Truth Seeker says, isn't it bizarre how they define everything and everyone however they want in any given moment and set the chessboard terms in their favor to win at all cost? Yes. Have you seen, there's like a meme going around on the internet. It's old, about it's a joke, something about like uh a pigeon, something about a pigeon and a narc. Like, what's this similarity with or how is playing chess with a narcissist similar to playing chess with a pigeon? And um the answer is, even if like uh even if the bird or like the narcissist loses, they're still gonna, mess up the board and strut around like they won anyhow. And it's true. Like, that's exactly what it is. Even if they lose, they still act like they somehow won. It's it's ridiculous. Jamie says, yeah, his behavior would even show up when playing board games with the kids. We called him the fun sucker because if we were ever having fun, he'd come and suck all the energy up and leave us. Like, what the hell? That's actually really common. It's bizarre, isn't it? Especially when you see it with their own kids. And you're like, seriously, what is wrong with you? And it's just their own unprocessed garbage. It has nothing to do with people that are on the receiving end of it. It's them, and they bring that with them everywhere they go. But it's really wild when you realize, when you see a parent who's jealous of their own child, and this is very common with people that have children with narcissists, where and I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've heard this from other people. They're like, God, am I weird for thinking this? Like, am I weird for thinking that um, my husband or my wife is jealous with the relationship I have with our newborn or with our young child? It's weird. I feel like I'm competing against this other person. It feels really icky and really weird, but that can't possibly be, right? I mean, what kind of parent does that? And it's not even, because it's normal for couples, your relationship changes when you have a baby. Um, that especially, husband wife kind of thing. The wife is spending a lot of her time with the baby, and it's not uncommon for men to kind of feel resentful because their life is radically turned upside down too. But it's when it's one thing to be like, oh man, this really kind of sucks. My life has really changed. But it's another thing, and this happens male or female with narcissists, where they resent the baby. And it's then they it's just all of these weird different dynamics that they start up with they're competing with the baby. It's wild. Right. That's a good point, David. He says, yeah, sometimes they'll tell you that your one up something is actually not as good as theirs. For example, they might try to explain to you that the master's that they have is actually better than a PhD. Yes, or better than your PhD or or whatnot. And yeah, or what it's their weight loss is more valid than your weight loss because they didn't get gastric bypass, or because they did get gastric bypass, and you're a fool for trying to spend all this time to try to lose it on your own. They always twist it. There is no winning. Like it's in their mind, they are always right, and they'll twist it in whatever way they need to in order to have that happen. Right? That's a good way to put it, Ava. She says, yeah, they have a cog missing. After 4 months, I am seeing how silly it was. All the fear was him just trying to exert control because he is that little man behind the curtain. Yep. Yep. When you see the little wizard behind the curtain for what it is, it's sad and it's ridiculous. And you realize, oh my God, how did I get in Oz and how do I get back? Because this is not what I thought I was signing up for. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll up here. Pokemon says they went into contact after 5 years, 3 weeks ago, and started the hoovering started yesterday. They left toilet paper on my door. Was the toilet paper left in the roll, or was it like they wrapped your house with toilet paper? I'm assuming it's was left in the package because, yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. The gifts, the calling, the texting, the empty promises, all of that. It's so hard to just see it for um to see to see the insincerity of it, but it helps when you do, for sure. Oh my goodness. Darlene says, yeah, it definitely happens. The jealousy thing. My daughter's ex had a baby with his fiance. That little girl was his world. The fiance got so jealous that she killed the baby. How awful. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, and you hear stories of, I mean, this does, you're right. This is a thing. It definitely does happen. There's a lot of these true crime stories out there, and it's really wild when you're listening to them, and it's just mind-boggling. Like I don't it's just so hard to fathom, especially how anybody could hurt a child. I just don't get that, especially out of jealousy. I just don't get, I just, it's so hard for me to comprehend. It's just so it's just beyond tragic. Gosh. Okay, let me scroll up here. Ava says, "Oh, the double standards, the hypocrisy. He thought I was lying in the relationship. Then I found out he was lying the whole time. It's absurd." Yes, I encountered that as well. And that was just the tip of the iceberg with the guy that well, one of the guys that I was involved with. The first outrageous, like, Lifetime TV movie ridiculous relationship. It was great up until I found out that it wasn't real. I mean, it just wasn't, it just wild, just absolutely wild. But towards the I don't know. I only remember it being towards the tail end, like the last 6 months or so of this constant insecurity and um, asking questions about me cheating and him going through the laundry, going through my clothes. And I, I just was like, what are you talking? Like, where do you think I'm going? Like, none of it made sense. It was just so bizarre, but I chalked it up to he had told me his ex-wife had cheated on him. And um, I just assumed that that's where that was coming from. And, um, we would talk about it. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Like we would talk about it all. I would try to reassure him. And and then I found out later on that he had been cheating on me with dozens, if not hundreds of people. It was all the time, a lot of people. Men, women, couples, groups. He was, I mean, nonstop. It was ridiculous. It was outrageous and it's ridiculous. I felt so stupid and so blindsided that I just didn't ever see that. But, if you don't think your partner's doing that, you're not going to think anything if their work schedule changes or if they come home late or if they say that they're going um, you know, out with the night for the guys or whatever. Like your brain's not even going there. So, um it just wasn't on my radar. But then I actually messaged his ex-wife and we spoke on the phone for quite a while one night, and I found out that everything he told me about their relationship was also a lie. She hadn't cheated on him. She caught him cheating on her multiple times, and after they were married, they were only married for 3 months, and she filed for divorce because she'd caught him doing squirrely stuff leading up to that. That was, and I say squirrely stuff, but it was cheating. Her friends caught him online, trying to online date, and he was married. And then she found a webcam, and he was sending. This was 15 years ago, so this was before texts and sexting was a thing. But was webcamming with people, and um, he promised, oh, he wasn't going to do that, and it was nothing, and he threw away the webcam. And but he was meeting. She said she was meeting. Um, he was meeting strangers off the internet for sex in like the park. I mean, it was just off the chain how the stuff he was doing. And um, that's just who he was. He just liked to do whatever he wanted to do. He had no moral compass, and it was all about instant gratification. Yeah, and completely absurd. So yeah, I get it. Uh, Chuni, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Chuni says it seems like so many narcissists go online to get sexual and romantic attention. Has anyone else noticed that? Yes. Yeah. Again, it's that low-hanging fruit. It's that low-hanging fruit that's out there. It's a quick fix. It's easy. It's easy to be anything that you want to pretend to be online. You uh I don't know, you're a 65-year-old man, you can pretend to be a 21-year-old woman. You're unhappily married, you can pretend to be single, living your best life, looking for your ultimate partner. And this happens. This happens more and more every year. When online dating was first a thing, it I think it was a lot more sincere. People really or at least, it was a lot more sincere. I would say that the predators, the scammers, the fakers, that was probably less than 5% of what was out there. It's probably closer to, like, 70% nowadays. It's really difficult to, um, it's hard to wade through all of the nonsense out there, but that's the sad thing too, is we live in this day and age where we all have, I think it's very rare for a person to go through life um, without vulnerabilities, without uh, some kind of, unmet needs. And so I think a lot of people are walking around with all these vulnerabilities, and they feel less than, and they feel unloved, and they feel insignificant, and they feel unattractive, and there's fear and anxiety and all of these other emotions. And going online and posting, you know, um, kind of cutesy pictures or sexy pictures or pictures that they know they're going to get a response from. It's just a quick dopamine fix. You get likes, you get, kind of this instant um, gratification. Even YouTube channel, like doing this YouTube channel, this stuff can make you weird. It can make you weird. If you're not already weird to begin with when you start, like some sort of YouTube channel or a podcast or any of that, there's a strong chance it'll make you weird. It's a strange place for, I think, just any human being in general, no matter how stable you are, to be put in a position where you you kind of have a mix of people coming at you. You have people that are your super fans that are like, "Oh, I love what you're doing and this is great." And then the people that'll call you all kinds of names and tear you down. And it can really send you on an emotional roller coaster. And it takes, and I think we've all seen these cases of people with any degree of um, fame, even if you're like just internet, some degree of internet fame, uh, that it can really just unravel a person at this. It just brings up all kinds of self-doubt and self-loathing and issues and all kinds of stuff. And um it can be difficult to not get caught up with, to not buy into, or at least not let your self-esteem be so dependent on either the bad or the good the feedback that you're getting out there. So to have it come from within. Okay, let's see here. Darling Ebony says, "Yeah, the craziest thing was he took me to a sex party and got mad because I was grossed out and wanted to leave. He said I embarrassed him in front of his friends. Yeah. About that. That's one of those things like you talk about ahead of time. You don't just spring that on somebody. That's no, like that's y- you don't do that to somebody. Like you can't hope that they respond well to that. I mean, that's outrageous. That was definitely a conversation that both people need to agree upon beforehand. And uh yeah, I don't blame you. That's crazy. Like I just wow. Let's see. Karen asked, Dana, have you heard of the Jezebel spirit? Yes. Yes, I have. The whole concept of um narcissism is yeah, I can't speak for every religious text out there, but it's definitely addressed in the Bible in multiple ways. So this uh you know kind of underdeveloped human beings, I guess, narcissists, this kind of behavior, this has been around since, you know, the dawn of time, since people, you know, I mean, if you're going biblically speaking, Cain and Abel, like this there's only four of you, right? Like there's only four of you on earth. It's slim pickings. You would think that you would be highly motivated to get along and and no, Cain kills Abel. So again, whether or not you believe in the story or not, I'm just saying that's it's uh i- it's a thing, and it's discussed in a multitude of ways. There's a passage in the Bible, I'll have to look it up, but it talks about um the these kinds of people, um that are envious, that are wicked, that are uh so destructive. And it says, basically do not engage with these people. Do not even have lunch with them. It's very specific. Like yes, like, you need to be self-protective. You need to back away. This is a thing. These people do exist. And eh, yeah, I agree completely. Darling Ebony says, I'm relatively fresh out of this relationship, and the sexual deviance has made the thought of sex gross to me. This is very common. And even if the sexual um, deviance or perversion, even if that wasn't there, it's very common for um, that level of shock and disgust that tends to go along with it. I think it's disgust. I think that's probably the emotion that we get keyed into with this. When there's large amounts of deceit of any kind, I would say deceit tends to go hand in hand with disgust. We're horrified, we're shocked, we're repulsed. When there's that level of repulsion there, we human beings tend you want to stay away from that. I think this stuff is kind of hardwired into all of us, and it's very common. Boy, I would say it's more common than not. I'm talking upwards of 90% or more with all of the survivors that I've talked to and interacted with over the years, myself included, where there's this complete shutdown of um, that sexual side of them. There's no interest in dating. There's no interest in being sexual whatsoever. And there may or may not have been sexual deviance involved, but I think it's just part of that trauma response of there's just certain parts of us that just kind of go offline for a while, that because we need to heal. There's other parts of ourselves that we need to work on. Um, it's more of that need to feel self-protective, I guess. I guess now that I'm saying that out loud, that's probably what it is. It's just that we go back to that basic need of needing to feel, needing to protect ourselves, which would be the opposite of engaging with somebody sexually. And I bet you that's probably where that, why that drive goes offline. SD says he would tell people that my degree should have had his name on it because he did most of the work or because he paid for it. Ah, that was so heartbreaking to see the disdain he had for me. It's outrageous, isn't it? The stuff that they say, that they try to kind of take credit for. I had an ex tell me that very similar thing with my nursing degree, that he played a part in it, and um, that he would like to think that he really played a significant part in helping me to pass the nursing boards. Just like, whoo, I gotta sit down for that one. Please, please explain to me how you did that, because you didn't. Like, I don't even know the words. I am at a loss for words with that. It just outrageous. And it's outrageous that he would even say that, or anybody that would even say that. Crazy. Darling Ebony says, I'm okay with not wanting to be bothered because he was sexually abusive outside of all that I said. He had a true sex addiction. Yeah. I'm just going to share this with you for if and when you, for what it is. You do what you will with me sharing this, okay? Um, the the first problematic guy that a sociopath really, that I dated, I would say also had a true sex addiction. Um, but he also had no character. So he also had, I would say it wasn't just a sex addiction, it was just a complete character deficiency. And that's kind of my issue with sex addiction. Is a lot of times it almost seems to kind of get this free pass of, oh, it's an addiction, but there's the deception, the deceit, the destruction that goes along with it, especially if we're talking, if he's springing things on you with, oh, we're going to go to a sex party, and then there's sexual abuse on top of that. That's outside sex addiction. That's, full blown like sexual deviancy, and very, very significant. And before I get into this, speaking of, I was just reading an article the other day about this. Um, those who have behavior that is considered, according to the DSM, to be kind of oh, paraphilic, or what would normally be considered like um, sexual perversions, pedophilic urges, um, fetish fetishisms, or there's 4 different categories. Is it, I want to say sadism might be one. I don't remember. And then there's another one. But anyways, the study has shown that um, those in one category, oh, I think another one was kind of exhibitionism. Those in one category, there was a 50% chance that that level of, that their sexual kind of I guess deviancy, for lack of a better word, their sexual behavior spilled over into other categories. So it wasn't just limited to one area. It tended to be multiple ones. So, and done multiple times, which makes sense because normally if somebody's kind of got to bend in a certain direction, it's not just that once. That's just the one time that other people know about. But anyways, back to what I was going to share with you. So the not wanting to be um, bothered, kind of wanting to be alone, and just having that part of yourself, does that switch turned off. One of one of the things that helped me, for what it's worth, is because I felt that way for a very long time, was in it helped me to reclaim my sexuality for me. So to not wait until I felt sexually attracted to a man, or not need to be in a relationship, but I was able to reclaim my body as my own and reclaim feeling like a sexual being as part of a normal, healthy part of being a human being, and reclaim feeling attractive for its own sake. So, one of the, and I came across this video not too long ago that summed it up perfectly. It's a gal. She is a burlesque dancer. She was also, I want to say, married to Marilyn Manson. But her name is Dita Von Teese, and she's delightful. Like, I just really, really like her. She's just really cool. Anyways, she's very big on kind of the whole just 19 glamour girl kind of look, kind of vintage beauty. Her hair is always styled perfectly, and the makeup, and she just loves lingerie and her whole thing. And she was saying that, and I love her attitude towards this. She says, you need to wear things that make you feel beautiful for you. If you're buy sexy lingerie for you, if you decide to show somebody else, like your partner, the sexy lingerie, then that's kind of that gift for them, but you're not doing it for them. Like, they get to share in that experience with you, but you're doing this for you. And I thought that's a really great way to to frame um to kind of frame that. And it's the same with men. It's feeling good about yourself, and and feeling sexual for yourself, and women feeling sexual for yourself, and not waiting for this relationship to bring it out within you. And I think when we can get to that place where um you're able to feel attractive, you're able to look at yourself in the mirror. I know for me it took a long time. My it my body image was really distorted after that relationship. um and I guess I still kind of do, but not as much as I did back then. I wore a lot of really baggy clothes. I just wanted to disappear. I didn't want my body to be seen. I didn't want to be found attractive by anybody. I didn't want to feel attractive. I didn't feel attractive. Like, I just wanted to be left alone, kind of a thing. And that wasn't even really that conscious of a thing. It was just how I felt. And stepping back into that and realizing this is my body, this is myself. And, um, you know, I, this is for me. This is me reclaiming my body and how I feel about my body. So just kind of for for what that's worth. That took me a long time to get to that realization, but um it was a real helpful one. So I hope that that helps you at some point too. Jennifer says, my sexually abusive father, it was 8 years of child sex abuse, would claim that he had a sex addiction, and he was getting help by going to Sex Addicts Anonymous. And one of his sponsors emailed me about how it's understandable that I'm hurt because she was sexually abused in her life too, but that I had to forgive him since he has an addiction. That's outrageous. And Jennifer, it makes me wonder if it really was his sponsor or if he just created a fake email and emailed you. Because Sex Addicts Anonymous, it still follows the same 12 steps. And it's really wild to me that anybody that is familiar with the 12 steps, let alone a sponsor, would ever say that to another person. That just does not. I just would be curious as to who the real sender of that is. Pokemon says, so it's normal to not want to be attractive in the beginning after abuse. That's been my personal and professional experience. I would say over 90% of the people, possibly even over 95% of all of the people, and there's been thousands of people that I have talked to and that have been in the support group and that I've interacted with over the years, who it's I would say like in the top 5, top 10 common challenges of survivors, regardless of the abuse they experience. And I think uh, there's just it's part of the trauma. My guess is it's part of the trauma response. It's when somebody is so deeply wounded that it's like an animal. If an animal is wounded, uh, or really scolded, let's say even emotionally abused, verbally abused, there's that level of fear and or physical pain present. What does that dog go do? That dog goes and crawls under the bed or under the deck or goes to the corner of the yard. It wants to be alone. And I think that kind of tends to be like just a mammal response in general. So yeah. And I mean, again, it makes sense. If a person, when we are profoundly hurt, we tend to all just want to isolate. We want to be alone, that physically and emotionally. And depending on how deep that wound is, you just kind of need time to collect your thoughts and to process what happened. And the thought of actually being sexual or being intimate with other people is uh, tends to be something it's just not even on their radar. Now, this isn't to say some people do become, this is more common, I would say, with teenagers and people in their early 20s, but it's not uncommon for a person to become hypersexual after some sort of traumatic event. And it's their way of trying to control the situation or to feel in control of their body. So it's really common, especially for young girls, again, teens, preteen, young, 12, 12 to 25 that become very promiscuous as a response of, no, I am in charge. I own my body kind of a thing. And, um, and they're mistaking that level of being able to control how many sexual partners and all of that with building healthy self-esteem and with building with true control over their circumstances and um, over themselves. And I think it's a way too for some people to feel safe, like, oh, I'm in charge, I'm gonna have a series of one night stands, because if I have one night stands, then it's nothing that's actually gonna get deep. And if there's no emotional depth there, then there's no pain. I'm not going to be hurt emotionally. So, um, let's see. There was Amy says, is it possible if you take away the drug that narcissism can clear up? Let me scroll back because I feel like I'm only, oh, here we go. She says, I'm asking if there's such a thing as drug induced narcissism or what it would be considered to have all been traits, but the only difference is the person is using drugs. So, yeah, that's actually really great insight on your behalf. And this is something that clinicians uh, struggle with. So, when addiction is present, you're dealing with a form of narcissism because addiction, it brings out the worst in a person. It's incredibly selfish behavior, and depending on how strong that addiction is, they're going to do anything in order to get their fix. Lie, steal, the level of deceit, the destruction, it just, addiction, anybody that's overcome addiction knows it's like that addiction just hooks you. It takes you by the ankle and it just drags you straight to hell. And in turn, you're grabbing onto other people and you're pulling them with you. And it's so horrible. So for a lot of clinicians, a person needs to have uh, a healthy amount of clean time in order to determine what are we seeing here with this behavior. Is this the addiction that we're interacting with? Is this a personality disorder? Is this potentially PTSD? Is this mental illness? Is it a little mix of all of the above? It this is it Diagnosis is very rarely cut and dry, and there's oftentimes a lot of kind of coexisting or comorbid things going on. So, uh, addiction and personality disorders do tend to run hand in hand. So uh, and there's also people with both personality disorders and addictions also tend to have an extensive trauma history. So it's a lot. I think, however, with all that said, this is where it comes back for those around a problematic person, whether their behavior is problematic due to addiction, personality, mental illness, you name it, childhood stuff, whatever it might be, to figure out, okay, where are my lines with this? Where are my boundaries with this? And in particular, where are your lines in the sand? So, um, because when a person is in a state of active addiction, there is no relationship present. They don't even have a relationship with themselves, and you're not sharing the same reality. So whenever anybody's in a relationship with a person that is actively involved in an addiction, there's three of you in that relationship. There's you, there's them, and then there's that monkey on their back, that raging addiction. And it's not going to work. So I would get clear on, uh, yeah, kind of where your line in the sand is with that. Because the thing too with addiction is it's not as simple as, um, and it's not simple at all, right? To say like, oh, well, you just quit using the drug. Like, oh, you just quit drinking. Oh, you just, quit spending money. You quit hoarding. You quit, you put the fork down. It's not that simple. It's what that person is trying to numb out from. So addiction, really effectively treating addiction is treating kind of the reasons behind that addiction. It's a long process, and it's, um, you know, just something to kind of get clear about what all would be involved with, just when you think about your lines in the sand with things. And this isn't just, and Amy says, I could have sworn that the person was an extreme narcissist. Uh, so is it possible that if you take away the drug, the narcissism can clear up? Yes, it is possible. However, I would also keep in mind that the other side of that is when a person is in active addiction, especially when we're talking substance use of any kind, their emotional maturity is on pause. So, and you've probably seen this from other people that you might have known over the years that have developed addictions, especially people that have maybe um, started younger, where you're like, gosh, this person seems emotionally, physically, developmentally, they're 35, but emotionally, they're like 16. And a lot of that has to do when a person starts abusing substances because they're not in reality. They're not learning and growing and self-reflecting. They're escaping all the time. So a lot of those internal life lessons they're not learning during that time. So there's this kind of whole emotional catch-up game that a person's gotta go through when they're recovering from addiction. The 12 steps can significantly help with this. This is part of, I think, why this 12-step program is so effective for the long term. But the other added challenge is there's also kind of this whole thing, with manipulative behavior. Yes, it can definitely be fueled by an addiction, but it's learned behavior. And there is something to be said with the whole kind of neurons that fire together, wire together. So when a person's already been able to lie and get away with it and manipulate and get away with it, that the potential, the ease of them to actually reopen that door and go down that path again it's very easy for them because those tracks have already been laid. So it's but yes, can a person get sober and be a radically different person? Yes. That absolutely is a possibility. Uh let's see, Amy, follow up here says, so after a while in recovery, the traits have calmed down, but I'm still watching because I don't know if it's like manipulation. You know, here's my take on that with addiction. And I think any person that's a recovering addict of any kind would agree to this. So, and I would encourage you, if you have struggled with addiction, you've overcome it, please chime in on this. My 2 cents with addiction is it truly is just this it's a hook and it grabs a person and it takes them straight to hell. And it takes a while for a person, even if they have the most sincere intentions of addressing that and um, trying to overcome it, it's it's profoundly difficult for a wide variety of reasons. And whether or not that person's manipulating intentionally or unintentionally, um, I really feel it takes it personally, I feel it takes a solid 3 years. 3 years of sobriety, 3 years of working a plan. Uh, some sort of sobriety system and plan, not just not drinking or not using drugs. What is the plan? So, how are they going to get support? How are they going to plan for hard times? What were their triggers before to use? How are they going to handle that now? These kinds of things. I'd wait 3 years and see how that goes. So that is a really fantastic question. Sing to the Sky asks, what if your narcissist is your addiction? Oh, so yes, this is a, a really fantastic question and a big answer that we are not going to have time to get into tonight. However, I will kind of point you in the right direction if you want to look into this. There's a concept out there known as love addiction. And um, I would look up Pia Melody. I think she's one of the most knowledgeable people on this topic. And uh, the whole, and also attachment disorders and trauma bonds. I would say all attachment disorders and trauma bonds are kind of a double whammy when it comes to love addiction. So when a person, especially attachment disorder, I mean, it sounds like so um like uh condemning, right? It just sounds so terminal. But I would say that a lot of people, and depending on the study that you read, anywhere from 50 to 70% of people have some sort of attachment disorder. So you have your secure attachments, and then you have insecure attachments. And then within your insecure attachments, there's anxious, there's ambivalent. What is it? Anxious, ambivalent, hybrid, disorganized is in there. I'd have to go look them up. But the anxious attachment is the one that tends to be the love addict. That tends to go hand in hand. So as a child, these attachment styles have to do with um, the attachment to our primary caregiver, generally mother, when the child is young. And so if those attachments aren't cultivated in the way, in a multitude of ways that that child needs, then they're going to tend they're then they're going to tend to have attachment difficulties. And that anxious style is that constant need of, don't leave me, I love you, I love you, I need you, I need you. And as a result, when a person has that attachment style, when they start dating and getting into relationships, it's, we might jokingly refer to this, oh, this girl is so boy, or this guy now, this person's so boy crazy, right? Or, um, and I'm sure men, there's an equal term for that, or, such a skirt chaser. I don't know, whatever people, they don't say that anymore. Nobody has said that in my lifetime. So I don't know where I got that from. But like, they, um, but that anxious style, it's that constant need to be in a relationship. And it is that feeling of an addiction. And it's those trauma bonds also go hand in hand with that. So it's that fear of loss. It's the highs and lows. And these are really present in an abusive relationship, where it's the fear of loss of, oh no, don't leave me. And then that's kind of distinguished or relieved by the relief of, okay, this relationship's going to continue. So it's the makeup, breakup, makeup, breakup, makeup, breakup kind of cycle. And it gets, with abuse, it just gets more and more intense every single time, and more abusive every single time around. And yeah, it's interesting. We can go into that more next time for sure. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Learning about different attachment styles is very eye-opening. Montana says, sounds borderline. Yeah. And that anxious style of attachment tends to develop into. So these different attachment styles, if left unresolved, if they progress on the more extreme end, tend to develop into different personality, or what we know to be different personality disorders. There's certain traits that will come from this. So the more uh, ambivalent or kind of dismissive or avoidant personality type, that type, this can go a number of ways, but that person, um, they don't tend to attach readily to other people. So they can, it's kind of thought to, that's where a lot of like the sociopathic behavior comes from, narcissistic behavior. There's just early on in life, there was this defense that went up, and that person's just not attaching to other people. So attachment styles can be addressed, they can be worked on if a person is willing. But understanding your own attachment style and the attachment styles of other people, it's a like I said, it's very interesting, and it starts making a lot of sense. And real quick, Ava asks, Dana, is porn really a real addiction? I guess it depends on how you define addiction. Yes, I think it is a real addiction. I think anything can be an addiction. Exercise can be an addiction. Uh, you know, substances, you name it. Anything can be an addiction. So, additionally, with porn, um, I mean, here's the thing, like, people will say, "Oh, well, there's this chemical process and, like, your brain's different." Like, there's always a chemical process involved, and there's always brain changes involved with everything. You eat sugar, there's chemical changes, there's brain changes. You drink water, there's chemical changes, there's brain changes. So, that's always going on. It really kind of irks me when people point at that as evidence that, yes, this is indeed a basis for an addictive process. Like, that process is always ongoing. You watch a funny movie, you watch a scary movie, like there's going to be different changes chemically and within your brain. Different areas are going to light up and whatnot. But with that said, that with porn, there have been studies that show that it does negatively impact a person's ability, for attachment and for intimacy, because there becomes this level of desensitization, and where people need more and more and more, it just kind of more extreme um, porn in order to get off. So there's long-term consequences of that. It's definitely not healthy um, for a relationship. So Ava was saying, yeah, I just don't understand how it can be an addiction. Well, think about it this way, in terms of behavior, everything that any of us do at a deeper level is designed to meet some sort of need. Everything. Everything we buy, every person that we're friends with or not friends with, the people we date, the kind of car we have, the clothes we have, um, the hobbies we have, everything, everything that we do is meeting some sort of need. And addictions especially so. But the issue with addictions is it's meeting needs that tend to be more that people are trying to suppress. And so because for whatever reason they're not comfortable with addressing them, maybe due to a lot of shame, guilt, denial, what have you, just suppressed trauma, they're trying to numb out, they're trying to escape from them. And so with things that are addictive, there's this dopamine response. So when we do something that feels good, even if it seems like it shouldn't feel good, like pain, for example, if somebody's really into um, pain or cutting, there's that dopamine response of, oh, this is such a relief. And that it's the dopamine that they get addicted to. It's that rush of, oh, thank goodness this feels so good, because before I felt so bad. And for a lot of people that are more like narcissists or sociopaths or whatever, that are engaging in a lot of this hypersexuality, we were talking about earlier, there isn't this depth of emotion. And so as a replacement, you tend to get a lot of thrill seeking type behaviors, which we would it's impulsive, it's reckless, it's irresponsible, it's instant gratification kind of behavior. And yeah, it's interesting. So Lori says, I was addicted to watching forensic files, but now I'm addicted to peanuts in the shell. Amy asks, and I'll just add to that, Lori. I am hopelessly addicted to club soda. I joke about it. It's a problem. It's embarrassing how much I go through. Um, it's a thing. I'll take it. There's definitely, you know, worse things out there, but yeah, it's a problem. Amy asks, is there a good book that you'd recommend that discusses attachment styles? Let me think about it. There's Let me write this down. Most of the books out there that have to do with attachment styles are in regards to kind of like child development. And I'm sure that there's books out there that are more comprehensive that kind of tie that into um, more of like the adult experience. Let me look around and see what I can come up with, and we can pick up this chat next week on attachment styles. So Bricks and Feathers is recommending the book Attached by Amir and Levine. I will check that out. Okay, so with that said, we are over on time because I just this is such an interesting. You guys have the most interesting questions and comments. It's enjoyable. It's nice to be around other people who are so interested in all of this as I am. Uh, I don't talk about this with like the vast majority of people in my life, so I appreciate you guys and in your time and this whole conversation. Uh, I wish it could be more of a not a chat, but more interactive because I have to say it always feels weird me being up here for 3 hours having kind of a one-way conversation. So, but I'm glad we can talk the way what we have, I guess. So, okay. So with that said, let's take some time. We'll do a kind of quick guided meditation tonight, and then I will see you guys next week. So take some time and find a comfortable spot. Whether you are sitting down or able to lie down, and just letting yourself breathe. Taking some time for you and setting down any anxiety or thoughts of the future that you have, and setting down any anger or resentment you have about the past, and allowing yourself to be fully present in this moment. Taking notice of just how that feels to be present in this moment, how light you feel with setting down all of the worries about the future, all of the anger or regret about the past. Just enjoying being fully present in this moment. And realizing that there is so much that is good and right with you, and that there is so much that is good and right with this moment. And allowing your body to relax. And taking a series of deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. releasing as much pent up stress or muscle tension as you can with each exhale. And inhaling with clean, pure, restorative, healing breaths, sending that wonderful oxygen deep down into your lungs. And visualizing that oxygen being transported all throughout your body, all the way down your arms to the tips of your fingers, down your legs to the tips of your toes, around to your back, up to your shoulders and your neck, to the top of your head. Perhaps feeling the slight buzzing of your body as that oxygen, that healing energy just flows through you. Staying as present as you comfortably can in this moment. And continuing to breathe. Taking some time to find a few things that you're grateful for. Realizing that gratitude is the antidote to fear. And that whenever you find yourself feeling fearful or anxious, to take 10 seconds. You can be grateful for the health that you do have. Be grateful, taking time to be grateful for the quality people that you do have in your life. Being grateful for the comforts that you do have. For sure, being grateful for the strength and the bravery and the courage and the wisdom that you do have. Those are tremendous. And acknowledging how far you've come and what a great job you've done so far. It's difficult to keep moving forward when there is so much pain and there's so much heaviness, but you're doing it. And that is something to really be proud of and to acknowledge and to pat yourself on the back for. Letting yourself know that you can rely on you. That you can trust yourself. That there is so much that is good and right with you. There absolutely is. That you are lovable. That you are worthy of being treated with dignity and respect. You are worthy of having quality people and quality experiences and quality relationships in your life. Absolutely, hands down, you are worth that. That you are curious, you're a lifelong learner, you're brave, you're determined, you're interested in personal growth. These are all wonderful, wonderful qualities. So Acknowledge that about yourself. And when you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. So, okay, guys, thank you so much for being here. We will pick up next week talking about attachment. I'll see if I can come up with some good books or some resources or something for you. So, as always, you guys, lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So, take care and just have a wonderful week. Okay, good night.